Good morning, everyone. I've been in a very dangerous mood the last few days. I've been in my spendy mood. And when my spendy mood strikes, it means I buy a bunch of shit in the spur of the moment, just impulsively, without overthinking it too much, simply because I want them, not because I need them. It has happened twice. We're going to see the results of one of those impulsive purchases in today's video, and the others are coming probably sometime later this week. And then later this week also, Dame Mother releases the Bridgerton 2 collection, so it's been spendy 2 weeks. I was doing so well in the first 2 months, and then bam, spendy mood strikes. I'm rambling too long. I'm taking my Glow Lust to hydrate a little bit and illuminate underneath my eyes, you know, the usual drill on this channel. So I purchased, as you have already seen from the title of the video, a Tom Ford quad. And I think I've mentioned this before, this is not my first foray into Tom Ford eyeshadows, even though I've had a very limited experience with his eyeshadow formula, because a while back, about 2 years ago I want to say, I was once again feeling very spendy and very curious about Tom Ford quads. So I went high and low to search for which quad would be the best for me and where to start with and blah 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 blah. And at the time, I already was aware of the fact that he offers the regular formula, so eyeshadows which come in like a metallic or matte finish. And I had also heard of his wet and dry formula. And I did look through all the quads, and I made the mistake of ordering. I'm taking the Bendy Avocado Concealer from First Aid Beauty. And I made the mistake of ordering one of his regular quads instead of his wet and dry formula, which I think would have probably been a much better experience for me stepping into Tom Ford eyeshadows. So after much deliberation, at the time I bought the quad Golden Mink, because Golden Mink had two like more neutrally satin matte type of shadows, like a light brown and a deeper brown, I want to say, I don't even remember anymore. And it had two topper types of shades which were claimed to be, you know, something as sparkly as a Pat McGrath topper, but perhaps in a slightly different formula. For foundation I'm going to take the Estee Lauder Double Wear Light. So I bought the quad from one of our local like high-end luxury type of stores. And it came in, and very excitedly I opened it, I put it on my eyes, I swatched the eyeshadows, and I was so disappointed, like super fucking disappointed, because one of those like more satin matte eyeshadow formulas was basically giving off zero pigment. It had like an instant hard pan on it, I couldn't get anything out of that eyeshadow. And the two topper shades, while mildly sparkly, like they looked pretty, but they look so similar that I couldn't really distinguish between one or the other if I put different ones on my eyes. So I was really disappointed with that quad, and I thought, oh no, here we go, I have completely wasted my money. So at that point I did something I had never done or considered possible in the Netherlands before. I contacted customer service, because I thought, you know, legit, if I'm paying so much money for a quad and one of the eyeshadows is giving off literally no pigment, there must be something wrong with that quad, because a lot of people on the internet were really raving about that quad. So I thought something must be wrong with the quad that I got. So I contacted the customer service, and to my utter shock, they actually accepted that I just want to return it and get my money back. And I will reiterate, this is a rare experience for me, because I rarely return makeup. First of all, because it's not in our culture here to return makeup. And second of all, because I despise waste. Taking my Dior Backstage Powder No Powder. So I returned it. I was very, very happy that they were willing to just refund me and take their, you know, subpar underperforming quad back. And I never looked back, and after that I was cured of Tom Ford eyeshadows for a really, really long time. And then a while back I went to our designer outlet in the southern part of the country, and lo and behold, a new store had popped in town, which was selling discounted luxury makeup. Taking the diffused bronze light from Hourglass, and they had like a whole section of Tom Ford makeup. And one of the products, well actually a whole selection of products they were selling, were his eyeshadows, and specifically an older limited edition collection that came in white packaging and that all had the wet and dry formula. And I swatched one of those quads. It was like a more neutral type of quad with sort of like peachy and champagne tones. To this day, I may regret a little bit that I didn't pick up that quad because it was under 40 euros. Originally, his quads here cost around 80 euros. And I swatched it and I was like, oh, okay. Now I understand why people are raving about the wet and dry formula, because it's a completely different texture of eyeshadow and it's actually a very, very beautiful and elegant texture. So after that, I kept thinking, well, someday I'm probably going to pick a quad from Tom Ford, but I'm not going to make the mistake anymore of picking up one of his regular eyeshadow quads, because that did nothing for me. And I am probably going to get one of his wet and dry formulas. In hindsight, I should probably just have picked up that neutral quad from the outlet because it came in beautiful white limited edition packaging. It was the wet and dry formula. I really liked the colors. They were a little bit sparklier, but you know, I was trying to be super responsible at the time and I thought, oh, this looks so much like the stuff I have from Pat McGrath Labs, so I don't want to spend my money on it. AKA, I wasn't in spendy mood, I was in being able to rationalize mood. I'm taking the Suku Melting Powder Blush in the number 08. Speaking of these blushes, by the way, I bought mine from Cult Beauty like a few weeks ago, and when I purchased mine, all the colors were in stock. And after that, Alice commented that she went on the website to purchase the other color that I have, the number 05, and it was already gone. And yesterday, when I was busy making my second impulse purchase of the week, I went onto the website and just out of curiosity decided to check what's going on with the melting powder blushes, and there's literally only one color left. All of the others are gone. They're probably going to restock them because I understand these are part of their regular lineup, but man, that went fast. I probably was lucky that the first time I went on the website they had probably just put these up. The hype was not as real yet, and I just struck pure luck because I am never on time with shit like this. Usually I will like hear about it from someone, I'll go on the website, it will be sold out, you know, I'm too late to the game, but this time, just by pure coincidence, I was on time. For highlighter, I'm going to take the Hockey Puck from Pat McGrath Labs, the golden champagne gold highlighter from the holiday collection from 2020. So yes, this is pretty much my story with Tom Ford eyeshadows so far. So what happened a few days ago? Like I said, a few days ago, my irrational, you know, Dr. Jekyll side decided to come to the front light, and I went on to that luxury store website just to check what's going on Tom Ford's website. Are there any interesting limited edition things that might have appeared that would strike my fancy? And lo and behold, the quad that I bought was available, and it looked beautiful because the packaging is just absolutely stunning. I'll show it to you in a second. And I actually thought the color story looks really interesting, and it came in his wet and dry formula. And then before you know it, it was in my cart, and then minus 10 seconds later, I had already purchased it. I spritzed my sponge a little bit with Fix Plus. Just to make it clear though, the packaging of the quad that I purchased is limited edition, but the actual quad is just present in his regular lineup, so it's not a limited edition quad. Because I'm finally at the eyeshadow portion of this video, which I think is going to take about 5 minutes, because as someone said on my Instagram, these eyeshadows are dummy proof. I've already like played around a little bit with them, so I already have a little bit of thoughts, but it's a quad, and it's a quad of neutral eyeshadow, so it's not exactly rocket science to come up with a look and execute it. So I bought the eyeshadow quad in the shade Body Heat, and I bought it in this absolutely stunning deep red limited edition packaging. I want to say it's something with cherry blossoms, but because I can never be bothered to remember these things, you know, this just says Body Heat. So this is the Tom Ford Body Heat quad in a limited edition packaging. I bought it on the Bijenkorf. If you're in the Netherlands, it was still in stock when I purchased it a couple of days ago. And it comes with the little cardboard packaging. It's super fancy schmancy, so it comes with a little pouch as well. and I decided to save all of that just in case I don't like the quad and I need to sell it. And the quad itself comes in pretty standard Tom Ford packaging for these types of quads. Only it comes in red, it has the logo on it. This portion here is like a rose gold, it's really, really beautiful. And the 4 eyeshadows that come with this quad look like this. There were also 2 brushes here, which I also shoved in the little pouch just in case I want to resell the quad. But let me show you the quad up close and personal. You can tell that I've already played around with these eyeshadows because they're not intact. And I can't really find names for these eyeshadows, so we're just going to call them 1, 2, 3 and 4 in this order, and I'm just going to quickly swatch them for you, starting off with the light champagne shade. Before I swatch these though, perhaps I should specify what the wet and dry formula is. So the wet and dry formula from Tom Ford is very recognizable immediately when you look at it in the pan, because it always has his logo embossing in the actual eyeshadows. And if you look at the actual eyeshadows in the pan, they look a little bit raised. All of his other regular quads do not have the embossing and they look just like more flat in the pan. So this is how you can recognize his wet and dry formula. And as the name already suggests, the idea is that you can use these eyeshadows wet or you can use them dry, whatever your preference is, with wetting them, of course, giving them a more metallic and intense finish. Let's start with the champagne shade, which actually happens to be one of my favorites in the quad. There's something very special and beautiful by the way this champagne looks on the lid. This gorgeous rusty brown is just stunning. In terms of tones, this eyeshadow is probably one of the most unique eyeshadows I have ever seen. And then the 2 eyeshadows that attracted me the most are the 2 taupe browns. I kind of got tired of waiting for Pat McGrath to release taupe browns in her special formula, so I kind of thought that this is going to substitute the lust for those for the time being. So here we have the lighter taupe brown, and here we have the deeper taupe brown. Okay, so these are the 4 eyeshadows, and I will immediately tell you what my first and biggest gripe with this eyeshadow quad is, and that is that the 2 taupe browns basically look almost identical. Yes, they have slightly different tones to them. This one is a little bit more pink, and this one has a little bit more like green tones to it. But with that said, they are equally deep in tone, so you cannot really, like in the pans, if you look at the eyeshadow pans, it almost looks like you can use this one to deepen up this one. You can't. It does not work like this. You have to use either one of the 2 to deepen your look or to use as a liner or something, but you cannot use these 2 together and expect a distinction in the tones of these eyeshadows. That is not how the game works. Other than that, they're beautiful eyeshadows and they have a very nice texture to them, and I think swatches won't really tell you much. You really have to apply them on the eyes because they do look very elegant on the eyes. But I quickly wanted to talk about the formula of these. Now, this wet and dry formula reminds me very much of the Blitz formula from the, baked shades from Pat McGrath Labs. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, let me just quickly open up the subliminal here and show you. We have several different textures in there. We have an Astral, we have a VR shade, and this is one of her Blitz shades. You will notice that it has that same like very smooth texture, slightly raised and baked inside the pan. Now, the difference between the 2 formulas, in my opinion, is, and those of you who have more experience with Tom Ford eyeshadows can please correct me in the comments, but to me, the wet and dry formula feels like a more finely milled, more lightweight version of the Blitz formula from Pat McGrath, which is why they're going to just pack a little bit less punch and be less sparkly. So the ones from Pat, they have a lot of punch to them and they have a lot of sparkle, but in terms of how they feel, it's a very similar texture. So in a way, you are getting special shades with the Tom Ford wet and dry formula, but you're getting a more finely milled, a more, how should I put that? Pat's eyeshadows can be very intimidating in your face and not super daytime friendly, whereas these, in terms of their tones and these textures, are very daytime friendly. Now, I do think that there are quite a few different types of looks that you can do. You can do something very smoky if you go with either of these 2 on the lid. You can put these 2 together, you can put these together, you can put this one as a one and done, you can also put this one as a one and done eyeshadow and then put either of these 2 as a liner. And I think maybe I'm going to come back and do a few more looks with this palette, but the look that I am going to create today is going to be with this taupe shade that I'm going to put in the outer portion of my lid, and then this one in the inner portion of my lid, and then this one I'm actually going to apply both wet and dry. And something else I wanted to add in about this formula is that I feel like because of the texture, it's also going to be a formula that works really well with the sparkly shades from Pat McGrath. So you can layer the sparkly shades over top of these and they will look really stunning together. So without further ado, I'm just going to grab a little bit of that taupey brown shade, and I'm going to pack a little bit here onto the outer portion of my eye, and then using windshield wiper motions, a term that I learned from Marlena a really long time ago, I'm going to go into my crease and start blending. Now these blend out extremely easily. That is why whoever commented on my Instagram post that these are dummy proof eyeshadows, they really are truly dummy proof eyeshadows. You can't really do anything wrong. They just kind of blend themselves out. And what I noticed the previous few times that I used them is that they almost add like a filter effect to your lid. I don't really know how they're formulated and what exactly kind of ingredients they contain, but when you put them on the lid, they almost have like a smoothing effect on the skin, and they make it look like it's photoshopped. So I can also imagine why these eyeshadows would be very appealing to someone who has more textured or wrinkly eyelids, because these are basically like photoshopping an eyeshadow. So where I have packed the shade a bit and I haven't really blended it out, it retains a little bit of a metallic sheen to it, whereas as soon as I blend it through the crease, it almost starts to behave as a satin, which is very nice, especially for you know, the looks where you want to just toss something on the lid, quickly blend it out and be out the door. Next I'm going to grab a shader brush and I'm going to go into the champagne metallic shade, and I'm going to apply this shade on my lid and inner corners here without really wetting it just yet. And I'm just going to apply like a very light wash, because afterwards I want to go in and see what happens when I use my finger or when I wet the brush. So now I'm going to go in with my finger and I'm going to apply a bit more of that here. These do have very subtle sparkle to them if you look at them in sunlight, but when I look at them like this, honestly, they don't really have much sparkle going on to them. I'm going to spritz with Fix Plus, so we're going to try this formula also wet. And I'm going to focus that here in the inner portion of the lid. And where I have spritzed the brush and it applies a bit more wet, it starts to look slightly more metallic. Nothing crazy, just slightly more metallic. On my lower lash line, I'm going to take the deeper taupe shade, just so we can test it out, but honestly they perform quite similarly. So the that wet and dry formula seems to be quite consistent between the different eyeshadows. This specific one, the deeper taupe shade, so the one that I'm taking right now, is the least sparkly one. Out of the three that I'm using now, this one seemed to have the least sparkle in direct sunlight. But like I said, you can't really see a significant difference between the tones of these two eyeshadows. So that's a little bit of a shame that you have such repetition in an eyeshadow quad. It's almost, you know, inexcusable that you would have two eyeshadows that look so similar when you only have 4. Okay, a neutral look like this really calls for a statement lip, so I'm going to do a red lipstick. And I realized that in between Lisa Eldridge and Pat McGrath Labs, I never really talk about my Vice lipsticks from Urban Decay anymore, but they are still standout formula and trooper lipsticks. They really last so well on the lips, they're super pigmented, they're so comfortable. And for today I have chosen this shade 69, which is a sort of very pink based red. Okay, I have zoomed you in a little bit to show you the final look, especially the eyeshadows. I don't really have any direct sunlight in my room right now, so I think these eyeshadows are probably looking a bit more flat and uninspiring, because there's really nothing to have those little twinkle effects come through. So I'm going to try to shine an artificial light on them to see whether that will show a little bit the twinkle. Okay, there we go. I think you can see that there is a tiny bit of twinkle, but it's very subtle twinkle. It's not Pat McGrath VR or, you know, astral level twinkle. Okay, so what do I think about the body heat quad from Tom Ford? I think you need to go in with adjusted expectations for this. It really depends on how you go into this. If you go into this thinking you're going to get Pat McGrath levels, you know, punch and sparkle, you're going to be super disappointed because these are not that. If you go into these though, expecting that they're going to be a little bit like the special formula from Pat McGrath, but without the intimidating pigmentation and glitter, then this is your perfect match because they are like the happy medium. They are not too dull, they are not too thick on the lid, so they're going to look very flattering because of that lightweight and, like I said, almost like smoothening texture. This is, I think, also my favorite thing about these eyeshadows, that they have such a Photoshop smoothening effect on the lid. I don't know how they do that, but they do. If you go in looking for this kind of effect, then you're really going to love these. But even as it is, this is so much more expensive than even a quad of Blitz Astro shades from Pat McGrath Labs. I think these were at the time about $65 or 65 euros, and this is still 80 euros. Of course, it comes with the Tom Ford experience on it and the Tom Ford name on it, so you're paying a lot of money for just having a Tom Ford eyeshadow quad. So take that with, you know, whatever kind of feelings it gives you. I personally really like Tom Ford. I think he's a super talented human being. And out of all the luxury brands out there, his brand is the one that I really want to like. Now, do I like these eyeshadows enough to keep using them and keep them? We shall see. Quite honestly, right now, I don't know. I think they look really cute on the lid. I think they're going to be super convenient for days when I really don't want to think what I'm doing and I want to be super quick. They are similar to other things that I have in my collection. I probably have similar things in my Natasha Denona Glam palette. I probably have somewhat similar shades in my Pat McGrath eyeshadows. Not quite the same in terms of texture though. So for instance, when I mentioned the Natasha Denona Glam palette, I think some of the shades in here are going to be very similar to shades in the Natasha Denona Glam palette. But again, the Natasha Denona Glam palette has much more of those impactful metallic textures. So if you struggle with those more thicker metallic type of textures on your lids and they look a bit more chunky and a bit more textured on the lids, then you're probably going to like this kind of formula a lot better. This looks basic but elegant, which is probably also what he was going for. I'm going to experiment a little bit more with this quad. I'm probably going to come back and do more looks with it. I'm absolutely going to try to layer some of the Astros from Pat McGrath over top of it to see how they behave, because I think they're going to add that extra little layer of twinkle that I might be missing in these eyeshadows. And whether I'm going to keep it, really only truly time will tell, because if I use it once a year, it's probably not a good idea for me to keep it. But if I keep reaching for it on days when I want to do like a very bold lip and I want to keep my eyes more subtle, then maybe this quad will survive. I don't know, we shall see. I'm curious whether you have tried Tom Ford eyeshadows, especially his wet and dry formula. What do you think about it? Do you have this specific quad, the body heat quad? What do you think about it? What kind of occasions do you use it for? Would you like me to do more looks with it? Do let me know what you thought about this look. As usual, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!